So what is going on, guys? I am BlackOpsAmazing. Welcome back to another video where today we are taking a look at Black Ops 2 Zombies in the year 2020. The other day I made a video about BO1. This year is 10 years since its release, and since you guys gave such a good reception on that video, I thought, why not take a look at BO2 Zombies next? This is one of my all-time favourite Zombies games. For me, personally, it's got two of the best Zombies maps ever, Mob of the Dead and Origins. But of course we also have Transit, Dierei and Buried. Black Ops 2 Zombies compared to its previous game BO1 brought so many new things to the table, such as buildables, a new set of characters, the scale of the Easter eggs went up another level, new enemies, different weapons, and so much more. So let me know in the comment section below which out of these is your favourite map, and actually, was BO2 Zombies your favourite game? Maybe it was BO3, BO1 World at War, maybe even Black Ops 4. But anyway, getting into it, BO2 Zombies released on November the 13th in 2012. The first thing I remember about this was the teaser trailer that dropped just a couple of months before. This was new because Zombies had never really been promoted like this before. At least not the base game. We always had trailers for DLC maps, but even for Black Ops 1 initially, Zombies wasn't promoted, so we could see even before the game released, Zombies was a hell of a lot bigger than what it had previously been. The trailer showed the transit bus going around this massive map to different locations. There was bus depot, farm, diner, the power station and town. I think it's safe to say we were all pretty excited, and then the map released. Straight away there was loads of controversy around Green Run, a lot of people hating it, some people loving it, I guess a couple of people in the middle, but it was something new, it was something that we hadn't had before. It was clear to see that Treyarch were attempting something different, and even in their own words, it didn't pay off. Transit's initial ambition wasn't there upon release. The map itself was the biggest we had to date, and because of that we had a transport system, again something we'd never really seen before. Besides from teleporters, an actual bus taking us around the map was new. But because the map was so big, it was split off into 5 different sections: the bus depot, diner, farm, the power plant and town. Each section of the map different in its own right, some areas not containing perks, some areas having buildable parts, others having the Pack-a-Punch machine location. Talking about the wonder weapon, this was one of the many hated things about this map, the Thrusterdyne Aeronautics Model 23, otherwise known to us as the jet gun. The first problem was the fact that you had to build it, which, okay, might not sound too bad. We would go to have other buildable weapons in Zombies later on, which would be, in my opinion, pretty good. However, what was so bad about this is it would break if you use it too much, if you let it overheat. It wasn't very powerful, and because Transit was just so big, finding the parts in the first place, unless you've played the map a few times or watched a tutorial, could be pretty difficult. Let's be honest, it was just a bad wonder weapon. Another massive issue with Transit was the Pack-a-Punch machine. I think out of any Zombies map we have ever had, this is probably the most annoying way of Pack-a-Punching. If you don't know, you have to place a turbine near one of the doors in the power station, and that will open the Pack-a-Punch area in town. However, the turbine is gonna break, so you have to keep doing it over and over again if you want to access the Pack-a-Punch multiple times, plus the fact that you have to actually build the machine. Yeah, it's definitely not fun. Transit did introduce a new perk though, this being Tombstone Soda. Besides from having one hell of a good jingle, it didn't return in later maps. It cost 2,000 points, and basically whenever you go down it allows you to retrieve your perks and weapons that you had before. So it was a useful perk, but because of how big Transit was, if you die in one area and respawn in a different one, a lot of the time you're not even going to have chance to use the perk properly and retrieve your perks and weapons, because the power up where you died is in a different section of the map. So if you're not quick enough, it goes. It probably would have been a better perk on a different map. One thing that I did like was the banking system. In town, there was a location where you can deposit your points, and then you can withdraw them at a later date. This did return in other maps and is really useful. The same goes for weapons, you can store them in the fridge at farm. So for example, you could save a Pack-a-Punch to gun and retrieve it at a different round or in a different game. We also had a few different new types of enemies. The boss, I guess you could call him, being the Avogadro. Not too difficult to kill if you have EMPs or you knife him, but can be really annoying if you're just trying to play the game. The denizens for me totally ruin the map. They pretty much mean you can't travel by foot from location to location, or you can, but you've got the denizens on you 24/7. The other type of enemy we had, which you may not know about, were the Hellhounds. However, they can only be seen on custom games for town. And then, talking about the Easter egg, well, it wasn't the most difficult. The most annoying part out of it all was getting the Avogadro to spawn under the pylon. But yeah, overall there were so many more issues with this map than there were good things. The fog, the denizens, the size of the map, the lava, the wonder weapon. Transit wasn't the best start to BO2 Zombies. But months later, a new Zombies map released, and for DLC 1 we had Dierei. Once again returning with our Victor's crew, this time located in China, where we are left to battle zombies in an upside down skyscraper. Again, just like Transit, this map was different to anything we'd had before. Dierei focused on verticality, there were multiple different levels, and it was interesting because for most parts of the map, you could only go in one direction, whereas previously you can choose to go where you want, forwards or backwards. On Dierei, you're forced to go all the way around the map again if you want to get back to the top. Of course though, there are the elevators, which serve two purposes. They are the locations for the perk machines and the pack-a-punch, but you can also use them as a transport system. I feel like Dierei is the map that I have the least to say about. It was very simple. Once again, there were buildables. There was a new perk machine being Who's Who. Similar to Tombstone Soda, it allows you to get your weapons and perks back once you are downed. However, this time you have to actually play as a doppelganger of yourself and revive your downed body. I think I preferred Tombstone to Who's Who, like I said, because there's really only one way around the map, unless you wait for the elevators, which can take a long time. Tombstone Soda was a little bit better for me, but both the perks are pretty similar. The only difference is, with Who's Who, you have to revive yourself. But Dierei had new buildables, one being the trample steam. We also had the wonder weapon being a buildable, which was the solidifier. Pre-patch, this was one of the best wonder weapons we've ever had. Even after the patch, it's still really good. In terms of new enemies, we had the jumping jacks, which are basically crawlers, but with advanced movement, as their name implies. They can jump off the walls and the ceiling. They're very quick, but not hard to kill. The unique feature of this map, I would also say the most annoying, as I mentioned earlier, are the elevators. These contain the perk machines and the pack-a-punch. They can also be used as transport to take you up and down the map, but the perks are random every time. You don't know which perk is in which elevator, and also because the elevators are pretty slow, if you want a perk, or let's say you need Juggernog, after you go down you've got to rebuy it again, you can find yourself waiting 1, 2, maybe 3 minutes or longer for the perk to appear. That was really my main issue. Other than that though, I feel like Dierei was a pretty simple map. It didn't really introduce anything groundbreaking. It wasn't terrible, but not my favourite. It was just okay. It almost felt like it was just there. But then we move on to DLC 2, where a few months later on April the 16th, my favourite zombies map of all time, Mob of the Dead, released. I always like zombies maps which are based off real life locations. Another one of those is Dreisendrache, but the atmosphere in Mob of the Dead is, I think, what made it. Plus the characters, the wonder weapon, even the boss Brutus. It was just very eerie. I feel like Treyarch got the atmosphere perfect. This is probably one of the few maps, and this is coming from a person that doesn't really play zombies for gameplay, or at least I haven't in a long time. I'm more interested in the story now, but this is still one of the maps that I can go back even to this day and play multiple times without getting bored. But straight away you spawn in on Alcatraz prison as a ghost in the afterlife. You have to revive your dead body. That was one of the main new features of this map. We played as our 4 new mobsters, Finn, Al, Sal and Billy, trapped on the island trying to break out of the cycle. The new perk we got here was Electric Cherry, a very simple one which just sends out a burst of electricity, stunning the zombies as you reload, but effective. The wonder weapon was also interesting because there were different variations of it. The normal one, the Blundergat, you could just get from the mystery box, or you could decide to upgrade it by pack-a-punching it, or even more so, turn it into the Acid Gat. All 3 variations were really good. Pack-a-punching on mob was also fun. Instead of just the standard finding the pack-a-punch machine, turning on the power and upgrading your weapon, this time it required you to build Icarus, which was the plane on the rooftop, and then every time you wanted to re-pack-a-punch, you had to find the canisters again. It might sound repetitive, but actually once you've done it more than once or twice, the locations of the jerry cans are really easy to find, and since it's not too much of a big map, it's not all that bad. Perhaps there are easier ways, but it was a challenge. It was 100 times better than Transit or Dierei, well, I will say that. We were also introduced to a new boss, being Brutus. Again, I feel like everything on mob was kind of a mixture between difficult and easy. I feel like everything was the perfect blend. Brutus wasn't difficult to kill, but he would shake the screen a lot. He would lock down objects such as the mystery box and the perk machines, but killing him wasn't hard, and he was really cool, let's admit. Talking about the mystery box, that got a change in design to suit the prison feel. The perk machines, because the map was set in the afterlife, were also blinking in and out. I still can't get over how good the atmosphere was now, thinking back to that time. If you look at our remastered version of this map, Blood of the Dead, I feel like the atmosphere is nowhere near on point. Whether it was just the old gritty graphics of Black Ops 2, the music, the characters, there was just something about Mob of the Dead's atmosphere that was way better than Blood of the Dead's. And in terms of the main Easter egg, this is a lot more user friendly than any of the others. You can pretty much do this every time. So looking at everything, Mob of the Dead was the perfect mixture. Not difficult, not easy, fun, different, a great atmosphere, great characters, a good Easter egg. It was the perfect map. And then we move on to DLC 3, which was Buried. An old western mining town teleported to the year 2035 underground in Angola, returning to the Victor's crew, Misty, Martin, Russman and Stuhlinger, as the 4 characters battle to activate the final pylon for Maxis. Of course, unlike any other game, in Black Ops 2 Zombies with the Victor's crew, there were 2 different sides to every Easter egg, the Maxis and Richthofen side. Canon, in terms of story, we know it is Maxis that took place, but as our characters travel to Africa, we come across underground, locked in a cell, Arthur. Previously known as Leroy before his name was officially confirmed, he was a friendly, non-playable character. He would help us going around the map, opening up areas, killing zombies, moving the mystery box, even holding crawlers for us. Depending on if you give him candy or booze, Arthur would do multiple different things, which was a really cool addition, something we hadn't seen before. Buried was also the map where we saw a bunch of new buildables. The trample steam returned, there was the turbine, then there was the head chopper and the subsurface resonator. We also had new weapons, which was weird because zombies never had new weapons halfway through a season. We got the Remington new model army and the ray gun Mark II. There was also the wonder weapon, which was the paralyzer, and the time bomb, so we had some really interesting and cool weapons in this map. The paralyzer has to be one of the most fun wonder weapons ever. You can use it to fly, it has infinite ammo, it kind of works like the jet gun where it overheats, however this time it doesn't break. The map also featured a new perk, which was Vulture Aid. This would allow us to see the location of war guns, perk machines and other features on the map. In addition to this, zombies would also have the chance to drop small bags of points and ammo, and certain zombies would even emit a green cloud, and when you stand in it, they don't attack. So a very useful perk with loads of abilities. There was absolutely tons of side Easter eggs. The main one, Mind Games, was, I'm gonna say, quite challenging. It involves a lot of timing and not the easiest. In terms of new enemies, we had a ghost lady. We now know who this is, it is Jebediah's mother, but at the time we didn't. It was just this ghost that was wandering the haunted mansion. She doesn't really do anything other than follow you whenever you go through the house, and if she touches you, takes points. So it involves a bit of strategy as you're making your way to the Pack-a-Punch machine. And talking about that, whilst the Pack-a-Punch didn't really involve anything to activate it, just turning on the power, getting there was more than enough of a challenge. Going through the house, and then going through the maze, and then going down the spiral staircase, and making sure you can survive on the way up. I think that was hard enough. Overall though, Buried is actually a great map. It's quite tight, there aren't really any main areas to train, but with the paralyzer, there are certain strategies you can use with this wonder weapon and combining other guns and traps, which could make for high rounds. Buried was definitely a different way to play zombies, and because of that, I liked it. But unfortunately, this was the last time for a long time that we would see the Victor's crew. As we move on to our final DLC 4 map, Origins, we come yet again with a new set of characters, being Primus, younger versions of Richthofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey. If you ask anyone their favourite map, the most popular answer will be between Mob of the Dead, Origins and maybe Der Eisendrache, but there's a good reason for that. Origins has always been up there. Sometimes it's my number 1, sometimes number 2 or 3, depending on how I'm feeling, but it was the final map for BO2 Zombies and boy, did it go out with a bang. It left us on a massive cliffhanger for the Easter egg, where we saw Samantha and Eddie in the bedroom, with Maxis calling them down to the basement, telling them to close the window. When we saw this for the first time, everyone thought that zombies was just a game made up by these two children who were just basically playing out the story in their head. Now we know that's not true. But talking about the map itself, the wonder weapon, or should I say weapons, which were the elemental staffs, were new to Origins. Before this, we'd never had wonder weapons for each player to use. Usually it is one that everyone has to share. However, in Origins, there were 4 staffs, 4 elements, and every player could get one. They were all different: wind, ice, fire, electricity or lightning. They were all useful. There weren't really any that were much better than the other. Because Origins was so big, similar to Transit, we had a transport system. This was the tank. However, unlike the bus, you had to pay for it, and it wasn't really necessary. Transit, the bus was vital, but the tank isn't. There's mud around the map which does slow you down, and so the tank's useful for that, but you really don't have to use it. Of course, if you're building the wonder weapons, then you're gonna have to, but I like that the option was there. Talking about the new enemy, for this map we had the Panzer Soldat. In a way, he kind of reminded me of Brutus from Mob. He was big, powerful, he looked really cool, but I think the Panzer is quite a bit more annoying. He's more difficult. He had 2 different weapons, being the claw and the flamethrower. Yeah, I actually dreaded coming up against this guy, whereas Brutus, I didn't really mind. When this guy spawns in for the first time, I think it's like round 7, 8, maybe even 6. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you better make sure you're prepared. Origins also gave us the Wonder Fizz, which allows us to get any perk from one machine. But first, in order to access our perks, we had to turn on the generators. The worst thing about this is they could be turned off by the Templar zombies. It's the same for the Pack-a-Punch machine. You had to activate all 6 generators in order to turn it on. But overall, Origins was a great map. Seeing the 3 giant robots for the first time during that time of BO2 zombies, for me when I first played it, kind of felt magical. I didn't think I'd ever be seeing something as crazy as that on a zombies map. But overall, Origins was fantastic. It was big, it was good for training. However, you were limited in certain areas due to the mud. It was a challenge with the Panzer, trying to miss the robots stepping on you, teleporting to the crazy place, and then getting that big cliffhanger for the main Easter egg ending. It is definitely a top 5 map. And then finally, I always forget this one existed in BO2, but we also had Nuketown zombies. Now maybe this is because it was a bonus map. Although it's still canon, it's a big part of our storyline. It didn't really bring anything major to the table. I would say the big thing was the perks falling from the sky, but apart from that there wasn't really anything new. It's just our multiplayer map now turned into a zombies map. It was small, it's tight, there's really only 3 main areas, the 2 houses and the central section, and so there we go. That was Black Ops 2 Zombies, taking a look back in time now that we're in the year 2020. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, a like rating would be appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Let me know in the comment section below which is your favourite map or game, and until next time, goodbye.